my coffee with me. It's a beautiful coffee. You have amazing coffee here, and it's still kind of hot, so I'm going to sip it every now and again, if that's okay. Thank you so much for having me. It's a humbling honour to be here, and I've had such a great time over the last few days already, just going around to see some really interesting practice. It's very reassuring when you come to a country and things aren't as extremely different as you think they might well be. We have an awful lot in common, and I suppose what I want to do is to look at the things that we have in common and what we've done differently so far. I think one of the main reasons I'm here is that there was some commonality found, and that's mainly down to Mary having had a look and said, oh, I think there's something interesting going on in that Scotland place over there. So thanks to her for encouraging me to come. In the spirit of the lively debate that was talked about last night, what I wanted to say is I'm very happy not to wait for the full 50 minutes and to talk at you for 50 minutes. What would be really helpful, though, is if we could do a boring thing of if you could maybe just sort of wave if you've got something that you wanted to ask about, and I'm really happy to be interrupted during the proceedings rather than it's quite hard to hold on to a question for 50 minutes, I find. I think, by the time I get to the questions, I think, oh, I had a really great one. I have no idea what it was now. So if you want to do that, please do feel free. I'll be really comfortable about that, and it shouldn't throw me off too much. So let's get a start. What I want to talk about is the essential place of community education and adult learning within Scotland. I think what we've managed to do is to turn our sector into something that is core to education, and that's something I want to explore with you today, and to talk about how we're doing that. We're not there yet, we're not the finished article, and in many ways I don't think anybody ever is. So I'm not standing up here feeling really smug to say, hey, we've got it all cracked. It's not about that at all, but I think we've done some very interesting things that I want to share. Essentially, I find myself in a very strange place, having become a senior civil servant over the last years. It wasn't where I thought I was going to end up. I every now and again have to pinch myself and remind myself that there's so many things I can't say. Now that I'm in the civil service, I have no views on all sorts of things that are very boring of me. So when people say, oh, what's going on with your election? I say, it's terribly interesting, isn't it? You want to tell me what you think? And so those parts never get any easier, I have to say. I think if you come from a community development and background and a passion for having views and encouraging people to have views, that part I find difficult. The part I find very exciting, and the part that I wouldn't give up for the world, is having an opportunity to shape from within. It's so exciting. It's such a privilege and an honour to do that, and I want to stay there for the longest time to see if I can keep making change. I'm with some very good colleagues who also love the idea of making change. It's quite strange to work in a place where I work with about 100 inspectors, and I'll come on to little bits about that. But what's interesting about it is we're all there because we have a passion. So looking around here, I can really identify that everybody's here because they have a passion. So I think that's something we've certainly got in common. So what I want to cover, I want to talk about the context of Scottish education and the place of what we call community learning and development in that. So I want to just go over that a little bit. I'm going to also talk about what we've been doing with adult learning in Scotland quite specifically, and how I think we've managed to position it in a place that you might want to explore. So any top tips and handy hints that I can give where I don't have to go into that vague, oh, interesting, then I'll do that. But if very happy to share our thoughts and ideas. But I also wanted to talk about the importance in our success of self-evaluation and inspection and review. Why all of that really does help to change the quality, to up the quality, to change the focus on impact, and also to position community learning and development where it needs to be. So I want to go over that. I'm not saying it's got all of the answers, but I do want to explore that with you. So some context about Scotland, and I was delighted and fascinated to be here last night and listen to the healthy debate that ensued when you were talking about your own population and the changes that are coming through there. So many similar issues. Again, what I was struck by was thinking, yeah, there's lots of countries in the world going through similar. We have a population of about 5.3, which is not dissimilar to yours. And we're also a very prosperous country, and don't take that for granted. We are part of the UK, but we have our own devolved parliament. We have a marvellous First Minister, and I don't say that because they pay the money. We have, I think, some of the best politicians I've ever seen running our country, and particularly passionate around education, particularly passionate about aspiration. So they are a strongly ethical, very moral set of politicians, and they are eloquent, they are considerate, they're respectful, they're interested. So we have it very lucky there. And I think, you know, again, not something we take for granted. That hasn't always been the case, but at the moment we have quite a marvellous group. And they fully control education. So the Scottish system is very, very different from the rest of the UK. So when I talk to other colleagues from the UK about being an inspector, and they stop and they go 3 steps back and they say, "Oh, that's lovely, like Ofsted," because there's a really different there's a different parallel that happens in the rest of the UK, where we have a much more disparate and disconnect that happens between official and HMI and practitioner, and I think we work together very much in partnership in Scotland. We see ourselves as not disconnected. I don't think of myself no longer as a practitioner, even though I've been in the organisation for 12 years. I still have that professional ethos and ethic at the core of my work. So we are a very different group from UK, as we should be anyway. We're a very different context. We have a country that has, very similar to you, huge amounts of the country with no population, apart from the sheep and the cows, and they would probably take it badly if I didn't count them in. So, you know, they are around in a lot of those dispersed places. We have, you know, half a dozen big centres of population. I live in Glasgow, which is an interesting city. It's a city of about 750, but actually 3/4 of the Scottish population can get to Glasgow in about an hour and a half. So it's an interesting place to be, where everybody can connect in. The downside of that is not everybody pays for it. So if like me, you live in Glasgow and everybody else in the whole country comes and uses your services all the time, well, you're saying you're welcome. You're also thinking, we need to actually change this. So we're doing some changes or considering changes to our governance system. So we'll see what's going to come from that. I'm smiling at Colin because he knows that one of the things that I'm quite excited about this week is being out of the country while the major changes to education governance are being announced. They're being announced tomorrow. So I was asked if I could join conference calls, but they were coming through at 2 in the morning, and I said, no, you're okay, I'll find out about it when I get back. So lots of change coming through, and I think change is what we all recognise and we're used to. We are a very international and outward-looking country, and I think what's interesting, and I was reflecting and very pleased that I'd written this in to my input already when I listened last night. We have an increasing population of refugees and others from other countries, especially Eastern Europe. There's been a recognition in Scotland that we were a decreasing population. We were an ageing population, and we, like many other countries in similar bases, have moved and evolved to that stage. So what we've been saying is to our Eastern European colleagues, welcome. We have huge ESOL programmes. We have a very strong refugee programme. In fact, we are working very closely with housing, with care, with all sorts of different other audit bodies to write us an evaluation process called How Good Is Our Welcome, to make sure that we're evaluating how we do that all together, and that we make sure that everything's done as well as we possibly can to encourage people not only to feel welcome but to stay, because we need them to stay. So I work for Education Scotland. It's an unusual hybrid body, so I just wanted to talk about what sort of organisation that is, because I think it's got similarities to a number of different organisations and departments that you have here. So we're an improvement agency for education. We provide the government advice to ministers, so we meet ministers regularly. We have policy lead for a number of things, including adult learning and youth work and so on. So we write the policy, and then we inspect the policy, and we help people improve the policy. So we have a very interesting space that we operate within there. We have around 320 staff, and about half of those are field staff. So we have maybe 160 field staff who work across Scotland, and about 100 of those are inspectors. And if we break that down, we've got maybe 12 of us overall across both inspection and support who come from a community learning and development background. So we're pretty substantial in there. And not for us to be too big-headed or anything, but what I think is terribly interesting is when I was reflecting on what we all do in the organisation, community learning and development punches well above its weight in Education Scotland. We're mostly in senior positions. And I think one of the things about that we reflect on, and often colleagues reflect on, is I think if you come from a background of community development and thinking about community and having that ethos, then you're more likely to think very laterally. You're more likely to think beyond the establishment, beyond the organisation. You're looking around all the time thinking, how do we do this together? How do we do things corporately? So we think like that very strongly, and I think as a result, you look around and you find many of us moving at that level. You can see the range there of the areas that we cover. We cover pretty much every kind of education. I found myself responsible for a few years for early learning and childcare and family learning. We move around while the assistant directors don't have to come from the specialism that they're responsible for. So that's really exciting, and it fairly makes you up your game if you find yourself actually having to go and speak to 500 head teachers about what's going on in assessment and curriculum. You do your homework. And that's exciting too. And I think one of the big benefits of doing this is we all understand education in the round, and we have to. And that's something I would really encourage. I think if I look back 20, 25 years ago, community learning and development didn't do that. It saw itself as other. We sat over there looking over and thinking, yeah, that's interesting. We're doing our own special thing, but lovely that you're doing that. And now what we do is we make sure we understand that as much as we possibly can. And it's been a game changer. We go in to look at prison education. We look at modern apprenticeships. The only thing, as I say in there, that we don't cover is universities, and we have a different quality assurance body for universities. So what is community learning and development in Scotland? It covers a lot of different areas, and this is the way that we all qualify. We undertake, if you want to go into to have a professional full-time role in community learning and development, it's a degree level qualification in community learning and development. So it gives you the coverage of adult learning, adult literacy, youth work, ESOL, family learning, community development, which means that I suppose we're all very lucky in that we can move between. You can go in and do specialist courses and specialist postgraduates and all sorts of different things in the specialisms. But what we do as a starting point is to recognise that across all of these areas, you've got core skills, and you need to be using the same core principles. So I think that's probably something that we do that's quite different. We also are very lucky in that we have one minister that looks after community learning and development. And that's been a move and a change for us, which is quite exciting. She's very, very engaged with us. We meet with her. I meet with her maybe every 6 weeks or so. And she puts us through our paces. We walk in and she knows her stuff. She's saying, what are you doing about ESOL in the more rural areas? What is the sector doing about that? How are you holding them to account on that? Do you need to change your inspection methodologies to do that? So she's very, very engaged. She asks the right questions. And what's interesting is she then is responsible for taking all of those questions and our thinking into the heart of government. So she sees that as a joint responsibility. So we do it, but she also does it. So we have an education minister who's the cabinet minister that she works to. Now we're very lucky as well that she also was his parliamentary aide for a long time. Part of the reason that she has the role within the ministry is that he trusts her completely. When we talk about it, we know we're being listened to. So very exciting for us to have that. But also if you look at what else she has in her portfolio, I think that's quite exciting. So she's not just looking after community learning and development, it's further in higher education. And also she has sciences there. And I was talking to some colleagues last night about the role of CLD in developing sciences and working through sciences. And it's interesting, our minister would ask us questions and say, you know, are the girl guides involved in science? And we're saying, of course they're involved in science. And when you talk to her, she's saying, yeah, in fact, I was sewing on some badges for my daughter about sciences. So of course they are. How do we make sure that that curriculum that does complement what happens in the schools, though, how do we make sure there's not a disconnect? So what we're trying to do is make sure that no matter where you learn, it should be coherent. I think the main word we use about education all the time is coherence. It shouldn't be that people have to learn and relearn and pretend they haven't learned. I think some of the worst examples I've ever seen when I've been out on inspection, I go out on learning community inspections, or I did when I inspected. Maybe I haven't been out inspecting for 3 or 4 years now. But I met a young guy at one point, and I'd met him in a school. And I went out and I met him in a boys' brigade unit. And I was looking at what he was learning, and I took him aside and I said, I'd like to understand why you're learning this, which is so far advanced of what you were learning in school the other day, and how do you connect that up? And he said, well, to be honest, Maureen, I don't really tell the school about what I'm doing here. They're trying their best in the school. and it was just fantastic. He said, you know, I don't want to upset them. And I thought, good. So he's patronising the living daylights out of the school, not telling them about every kind of sophisticated thing he's learned and understood out in the community, and that's not right. He shouldn't have to work that hard. We shouldn't have to work that hard, and the school shouldn't actually have to double work. So there's something very interesting about those kind of things, and that's the sort of very example that we take into what we do. So I've talked a little bit about our CLD workforce. We have a Standards Council for Scotland that provides quality assurance for all the courses. We also have voluntary registration. That's an interesting thing. Just now, out of the workforce size that you see there, we maybe have 10,000 people interested in signing up, but we've only got 1,500 who've actually signed up and done the voluntary registration so far. So unlike the rest of the rest of the education workforce, where registration is mandatory, we've come in so far saying, let's do it on a voluntary basis and see if we can test it out that way. One of the things I think I may well be going back to is to find that we're exploring what needs to happen across the whole education workforce in a different way, but that's how it stands just now. So as you can see, I tried to break it down and look at the stats on those who specialise in adult learning for you. So 8%, I think that's us looking at about 600 people or so in there, isn't it? She says, trying to get my morning brain on. Maybe if I have a little sip of my coffee, it might help. So substantial numbers that are working in adult learning and in your sphere. And this is what we talk about in adult education in Scotland. We've been doing a lot of work on adult education in Scotland over the last number of years. We've got a minister, and we had a previous minister who took it to heart very much and actually drove the development of our Statement of Ambition and Strategic Forum. And we also have adult literacy's ambitions that are now laid out and that are driving our framework for adult literacy. What I'll do is I've put quite a lot of the links into the presentation so that you can click on to any of the links. I think the presentation is going to be shared. So what I'll do is I'll bed in some more links. So if you are interested in any of these, you can just go and click in. We try and make sure that everything, all of our material and policies are as open as they possibly can be. So if you find anything you can, then please poach. We're very comfortable about that. Self-evaluation is at the heart of everything that we do in Scotland in terms of education. And we're encouraging all of our sectors to use what we call the virtuous cycle of improvement. So it's not about one-off. the most depressing things that happen when you're an education inspector is going out and somebody's saying, here's my self-evaluation, and they hand it over like they want you just to tick it and say, that's very good, off you go, and don't look at that till the next time we're coming back. We can't stand that. In fact, as you see that happening, you're thinking, they're never ever going to get to excellent, they might not even get to very good. And as people are talking you through how they handle themselves in self-evaluation terms, it really helps you. When we started evaluating self-evaluation, one of the most depressing things that someone said to me was, we know we're not good at self-evaluation, but since we know that, and that's a really good self-evaluation, can we still get good? We were saying, well, I really like your style on that, don't get us wrong, but no. No. So there's something about having that deep understanding of self-evaluation. You only know yourself if you know your learners, you're engaging with your learners, you're engaging with your partners. They're all part of the self-evaluation. So again, a big scare comes through when people say, yeah, I sat up over the last couple of weeks writing the self-evaluation, and you think, uh-oh. No, unless this is something that's at the heart of your work and part of your everyday practice, and that is then used in this cycle to keep things flowing, to help you to improve, to think about how you're going to do that, to come back and acknowledge what you've done and then refocus. None of us are ever perfect. So this is about doing it forever and doing it in the long term. Again, we've got some really helpful self-evaluation frameworks, particularly for our sectors. So we have a how good is the learning and development in our community. Again, if you were interested in that, you can go in and download aspects of that, pull it through. We also have a specific one, though, that I think might be helpful to some organisations here, which is how good is our third sector? So how good is our NGO? And what we encourage people to do is to take some of the quality indicators from that framework, some from the other, and mix and match so that they can build their own self-evaluation framework to suit their own purposes. Yeah, so mixing and matching is the order of the day. What you can then do is you can work with the schools in your area. They bring out some of the quality indicators from how good is our school. You can go to the college and they can pull out their indicators, and you build a really interesting self-evaluation process where you can say, how good is the learning in Christchurch? How good is the learning in a specific neighbourhood? And you really get a chance to get into the heart of self-evaluation in a much more meaningful way. So we're in the process of digitising our frameworks so that people can pull them over physically as well online. But at the moment, you can do that very easily. So I think the premise that I'm starting from is the Scottish Government and us as a government agency. We're very, very clear that every part of the learning sector has a role to play in the Scottish educational attainment gap. We have our main policy just now is about looking at how to close the poverty-related attainment gap, and I know that's something that you've looked at back and forth and across the country here every now and again. I'm not sure, is that a policy that's in or out of flavour at the moment? Dabbling in the middle. How exciting! We have a government who have said it's the only policy they want to be judged on. Now, that's powerful. They've said no matter what we do, if that's the only thing we do, they are putting a lot of money into it. They're putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of resource. So it's not just our Cabinet Secretary for Education who stands up and talks to it and demands lots of reports back and briefings back from myself and colleagues. It's our First Minister. She's there, she's passionate, she's listening. And I think what's interesting is that they get the idea that if we're going to be a really prosperous, economic, aspirational country, then you have to close that gap. We've got some really, really good tools that we've developed. We have a national improvement framework and various other things along with them. And again, I'll send the links through and you can have a look at them and see what's interesting and what you might want to encourage people to use. And you might think, well, I'm certainly not going to encourage them to use that because we don't want to go down that assessment route again. But whatever you want to do, you could have a look at that. But I think we can already see that making a difference, that we have we have a countrywide focus on closing the gap, and it runs across every department in government. So it's not just about saying it's an education focus. We look at it from a transport perspective. We look at it from a health perspective. We look at it from a housing perspective. So everything that you need to think about. We undertake a shared risk assessment every year for each local authority where every scrutiny body like mine comes together and we lock ourselves in a room and we have bun fights for days and days and days about the stats and the data that we have about how each local authority is performing and what it needs to do to get better about all of this. So an awful lot of work done jointly. Are you still okay out there? I do worry. I thought it's a 9 o'clock slot and I'm going to come in and talk to them really, yeah, all of this fun stuff. So I'm sorry, and some of it's quite dense and I hope it is okay. It's there, you can use it. So I hope I've already managed to put across the part that CLD are part of education. We're not just partners in education. And I think that's critical. I don't like the idea of partnerships an awful lot of the time. Thank you. Because I don't think I've come across an equal partnership yet. Okay, so I think as soon as you talk about school and their partners, education and its partners, adult learning and its partners, then those other people are other. They're not core. They're not centred. They're not they're not there to actually deliver equally. They're there to do it if they feel like it. They're actually there to do their own thing. So from my point of view, I don't like the idea of CLD as partners in education. So I did say to Mary I would shift away from that. I've spent a long time studying and going out and exploring partnerships, and it does give me a kind of a bit of a fear almost any time I see the word, because I don't think most people even understand truly what they want to get out of most partnerships. So I've talked about the First Minister, and I've talked about coherence. I think what's really exciting is this idea that our curriculum is about building coherence across education regardless of its delivery point. That's not easy. It's not easy for a number of reasons. There's an awful lot of there's an awful lot of respect required if you're going to believe that what is done in one setting and one sector is just as good as what I do in my own backyard. Most professions are looking in separately and thinking, that's lovely, you've done it, we'll take it from here. I'm sure you did your best on that, but I'll bring them back up to speed because you probably weren't that good at that, you know. And I think that's particularly true when you get into things like literacy, numeracy, sciences. Any of, you know, people will trust us with the soft. They'll look at us and think we have magical powers, we're chirpy and friendly, we must be really lovely, so we must be able to get all of those soft skills right for people. We can get their confidence up, we can do all sorts of things with health and well-being, but we can't do the hard stuff, and that's not true. And I think we need to actually find ways to step up into that and make sure that people understand that we do know what we're doing. And actually, by embedding an awful lot of the work on literacy and numeracy and sciences into the work that we do, it's a much better way of learning than sitting in a room. The vast majority of learning that's done that is effective is actually embedded in tangible reality for people. So I think we are very good at that, and we need to get that across. But in order to do that, I think we also do need to up our game. I remember when the first time I was going out on a secondary school inspection, and I spent weeks beforehand making sure that I understood the qualification system better than those teachers. I wanted to make sure that as I was walking into the room, nobody was going to be able to trip me up. Now, that wasn't just about being pompous or trying to be a smart aleck or not being embarrassed about it. I thought that if I didn't understand that, I wouldn't be able to influence and truly understand it. And I do really encourage everybody within this sector to really be thinking about themselves as having to understand that the entirety of education. It's not easy. Some of the best things I ever did was I did a trade-off, because what I realised is that I had quite a lot of colleagues who were really great stats geeks, but they didn't understand what was going on in community planning. They didn't understand all sorts of other things. So I would set up half-day buddy sessions with quite a lot of colleagues and say, okay, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. You know, let's try and really get to the heart of all of this, and I will help you understand this in a deeper way, because I found that most of my colleagues who came from that formal education sector didn't have, they really didn't have a good understanding of why our processes work a lot of the time. So that was my handy hint about how to do that. We also make sure that CLD has an equal footing and an equal place in having practice exemplars of how to do the work. As was mentioned in my introduction, one of the things I've been developing over the last couple of years is a national improvement hub for education. It was required, because I don't know what it's like here, but education is a very, very conservative, well-mannered industry in Scotland. So people were putting lots of great things up online, but nobody would take anything down. So we had a whole bunch of irrelevant old nonsense up there. So when I was asked to take this over, we had 80,000 pages of stuff, I think we'll say. Some of it was good stuff, some of it not so much. And people wouldn't take it down because they were saying, well, it was written by a really important guy. It was written by an international visitor we had. And I said, yeah, well, that's 10 years ago, and they didn't know what they were talking about. So why are we leaving it up to be well-mannered, you know? So we pulled everything over. If you go onto our National Improvement Hub, what you'll now find is you'll find examples. Everything's on a template that actually says, who's this for? How can you use this in practice? How can you use this to help and inform your practice? Everything's got helpful questions to help you to explore things. And everything's got to be reviewed at least annually. And if it's not relevant anymore, it gets ditched. And within that, what we did was we made sure that there's lots of things in there about CLD practice. And I think one of the best things we've done within that system is we've made sure that everything on the hub is for education practitioners. It's not for, this is for teachers. It's not for, this is for lecturers. This is for adult learners. It's about, if you want to know about how to deliver really good literacy, have a look at this. And it could be from a number of different disciplines. The examples could be from a number of different disciplines. We're trying to encourage that interdisciplinary changeover. We're trying to say people can learn from each other regardless of their own professional space. And I think that's quite critical. So what's interesting is I go back and I have a look at all the Google Analytics to see who's actually been in exploring. It's really sad, isn't it? I should get a hobby. Just hear myself saying that I'm such a geek. But it's really interesting when you go in and you have a good look at what's going on, and you see who's actually going in and looking at the CLD practice. One of the main things we've done over the last couple of years is we've moved to really driving family learning within schools, within all schools. We built, inspectors are very sneaky, and I'll say that even to the lovely inspectors here that I'm going to meet. We do come with a bit of sneakiness because we understand our power. When we ask a question, people will make that work. So we put a question into our overall self-evaluation for schools a couple of years ago about how good their family learning was. And a lot of them thought, what family learning? So they had to go out and they had to talk to the right colleagues. They had to do all sorts of things. So we're now starting to see a lot of them coming in to look at the examples written by CLD colleagues on family learning so that they can get their own practice in order. And I think that's a really healthy thing. There's a few tiny words and phrases that have made a huge difference to how we've managed to do this on our journey. And it's really sad when you stop and think about what's your legacy going to be. And I think mine's going to be something like half a dozen tiny little words that I managed to get into policy. And I think, I hope that's enough. You know, other people have invented amazing things, you know, but I think one of the best things that we did was we really, really pushed very heavily on the concept of planned learning being the legitimate part of the core curriculum within Scotland. And as soon as we talked about that, that meant that CLD, all different core components of it, whether it was in youth work, whether it was in modern apprenticeships and so on, if you're training on a planned learning basis, if you've got learning outcomes there at the heart of your work, then you're delivering planned learning, so you're part of that core curriculum. And that has been a game changer. because originally it said that it was going to be about working schools. So it was saying, what's the school-based learning? And we were saying, no, let's make it planned. So that has made a big difference. So whatever you can do to influence your policy colleagues to make these small changes. Sometimes I think we go in looking for too much. We think we need to go in and demand more money, more this, more that, more legitimacy. You do it by stealth and you do it by small things a lot of the time. And I think that makes an incredible difference. Here's a really sad one that we built in, which has made an incredible difference within the CLD sector. Asking people to look and tell us in no uncertain terms what unmet needs they have in community learning in their community, and why they're not addressing it. When we built unmet need, and I remember sitting in darkened rooms for weeks with people when we were trying to work out what we were going to do and say around this. And when we came up with this, we were just looking, going, this is really naughty. This is really fun. And we didn't do it just to be naughty or fun. We did it because we thought there is no way to meet all needs in all communities. We all need to prioritise. We don't often talk about how we're prioritising and who we're leaving out. And I think it's okay to do that. I think we've got limited resources. We all have limited resources. So sometimes you might want to say, do you know, actually, in this community. So what we'll see is people saying, in this community, we want to talk about the unmet need of the NEET population because we simply can't get to them. We don't know what to do on that, and we're asking people to be as honest as that in their plans when they put them back into us. That's really powerful. I don't know what to do about X is the most honest thing people can do. And then we can talk to them about those plans. We go out and say, well, if that is your unmet need, what are you doing to negotiate with the college sector? What are you doing to negotiate with others? What are you doing to really get to the heart of why you can't do that? What are you doing to recruit differently? So it's been really exciting to do that. And while I'm here, I've got colleagues who are writing further guidance to go back out, because in the first set of plans, people were kind of fudging that answer. So although some people were very true to the heart of it, some people not so much. Some people were just kind of wimping out and telling us the things they thought we wanted to hear. So quite a lot of people were saying, people were not meeting the needs of our, the middle class, the people who can just do their own thing. They don't need us. So we're not doing that. And I think they thought we'd really want to hear that. We were saying, wow, so you're just building up, a pressure cooker of people who are not getting anything. Why would you do that to your most powerful, eloquent people in your community? Are you kidding us? What are you going to do about that? So we'll see what happens with this. But I would say genuinely, it's a powerful way to do it. We've moved to talking about educators and learners rather than teachers and pupils a lot of the time in our everyday information that comes out about schools and about education. It's not easy because people like to talk about schools because it's an easier thing a lot of the time for parents and communities to understand. If you're talking about education, it's really about schools, but it's not. So we spend quite a lot of time, I spend quite a lot of time going through ministers' speeches and so on, just going. So we are trying to get everybody to make sure that it's changing. Because again, that change gives us an equity. And the power of that, the power of those simple words that mean that we are equal to, and we are delivering just as well. And that learners, whether they're adult learners, whether they're younger learners, but they're learning when they're out in communities, that's just as valid. They are still learners. They're not just young people. So it's very different to start using that language. What I wanted to do just now is to show you a couple of little examples so that you don't have to listen to me all the time. These are examples of people who have been going through, adult learners who have been going through our Adult Achievement Awards, and I'm going to be talking about them in a few minutes' time, but I thought it might be just quite nice to see what's going on.
I really enjoyed supporting the group that I've been working with to do the Adult Achievement Award. I think that it has got such huge applicability, helps people to reflect on their own individual, very personalised view of their learning, and I think it is a qualification that fills a gap that has been so far missing in adult learning.
I did the award for my own personal development, and it gave me the opportunity to reflect on my own capability of the different training I have done.
I did the Adult Achievement Award to help me in my future job seeking. I currently volunteer at my local community centre and wanted to reflect on the training that I have received.
Ha mi uafasog tolacha gun gaf mi parst ein the awards. Ha mi smunike guveli uafasog kudramok a vi coet erash na yunsik mi. Hujiki mi a vi coet erst agus a vi coet an artis a va mi janav ein the Aotearoa. Maureen Mallon.
Voig me through Adult Achievement Awards at an two of us a yunsich me agus hook misneach ro.
Is minic go on Adult Achievement Awards fiadhars in the class akin an push 3. Hook or new the is minic Seirse dúnsa go gacinn an dáir go má farsing agus go nuingin planna a chuidir dáir ar san dúnsa go bhenach go dhéanamh.
So in terms of just taking you very quickly through what we've been doing for adult learning specifically, what I wanted to do was to set the context of what we've done to shift the priority and shift the interest. We've been having adult learning conferences for a number of years, but what we did in 13-14 was we did a lot of schmoozing with our minister. We had a minister who was very interested, and he came along and gave the keynote addresses to our adult learning conferences in 2013 and 14. And you can't underestimate, obviously, the power of getting the politicians in and on side. Not only does it give us the interest and legitimacy from them, it changes it for officials, and also it changes their perception because they're spending time doing what we're all very good at. We were making sure that they were meeting the right adult learners, people who were passionate. It was switching them on. They were cross-sectoral events. And what they did was they produced action plans which were actually implemented. They were pretty tough challenges in it. And what that did was we managed to lead that into developing a strategic forum for adult learning. Now, I think that again shifted the balance for us. We moved from having lots of really great organisations out there doing things individually. We've got a number of organisations. We've got two main organisations who are quite like yours, this one here, where we've got a Scottish Learning Partnership, which is essentially about learner voice, and we've got an organisation called Learning Link Scotland who bring together all of the membership bodies. We thought, yeah, this wasn't about saying they're not doing their job properly. We said we need to do something to shape this and change it. So we established that. It was chaired for the first couple of years by the Cabinet Secretary. I chair it now, and it's coordinated by Education Scotland. And all the key agencies are represented there. It is a game changer for us in terms of how we do business. We have 4 different groups that sit below that overall forum, and they are co-chaired by all the member organisations who are there, all the lead bodies, but they have to report back. There's an accountability framework, an accountability structure, because what we did was we developed a statement of ambition together. And when we published that, we said that there's going to have to be an awful lot of accountability. We are not going to just put this statement of ambition out as our national guidance and then just walk away. So people have to go and come back on a quarterly basis and talk about what they're doing to shape and drive the change that's required. Again, we'll make sure that you've got all the links for all of that. So within that, I think, again, some of these things are so obvious, and they're the things that do inform our everyday lives. But it was really important for us to actually update and really think about our core principles. What are we for? Adult learning doesn't just start in one place. It's actually it's part of a process of learning. So it's about lifelong learning. Let's have a look at what that means. We're also saying it's life-wide. So it's not just about the classes that we might run discreetly. It's not just about parents involved in parenting programs. It is about actually thinking about the work that we do that is about planned learning to enable people to have better lives overall. So again, it was important for us to update and change these principles. And that it's learner-centred, and that everything is about working around the individual motives of the learners. The key messages that we have in that we are very ambitious as a very small country. We want to be the best place in the world to grow up. So we'll see you in healthy competition on that. I think you're beating us with weather and brightness and all sorts of things, so I don't know what we're going to bring to balance that out, but we're going to do our best. But we want to make it a really exciting place to come to live in, to learn. We don't want people to go away and not come back. So we're seeing adult learning as a core part of that. We think everyone's got that right to access high quality learning, and we do an awful lot through digital learning to make sure that that works. There's a big ambition for digital learning, particularly in the community learning world. We've got digital learning strategy for Scotland. We're making sure that more and more of our courses are available online. We're making sure that people can join them from the small local communities that are out on the islands. We've got a lot of very small island communities. We've got a lot of schools that have less than 10 pupils, so we've got one or two adult learners there who, if you were trying to run a class, you wouldn't have a hope in anything to doing that. So we're shaping it and changing it differently because we're saying it doesn't matter where you live, that you have an equitable right to that. We make sure that all of the policy development also involves adult learners. So again, because we've got a number of learner forums and so on, we engage with them very meaningfully. And I think because a lot of us come from that community development and adult learning ethos, we do make sure that we're following the correct principles so that it's not about token consultation, it is about deep, meaningful engagement. So I think what we're doing with adult learning is really exciting. I think it will be a model for excellence. We've got a lot of interest in what's going on there. When I was coming here, I spoke to our forum, and they were all jumping up and down saying, "Can we all go?" And I said, "Well, I don't think we can all go because I think 20 of us arriving to talk to people might not be great." But what I did say is that we would make a commitment that if we can make connections across, what we would like to do is we want to learn. Although I think we're doing very well, we don't think we've got all the answers, and we think you've got some really great, interesting answers. We want to shape and learn with other colleagues. So if we can make some connections out of this, so much the better. So I've got a group sitting, waiting to make connections with you all. So organisations like Linking Education and Action on Disability, they're an amazing adult learning organisation who work with our learners with most complex learning difficulties. They've got people going through the Adult Achievement Awards at levels 2 and 3. They are really working very, very hard to make sure that they take the policy position and that the learners influence a policy position. There are probably many organisations here that they would like to work with. So I'll give you some links and some connections to them, and I hope you want to talk to us. We have some very specific strategic priorities we've identified, and I won't go over them. I think they're mostly pretty obvious, but again, you'll be able to see what they are, and I think hopefully they do resonate with you. It's about co-design is a big thing for us. Co-production, co-design is absolutely at the core of our work. We've got some big current work priorities for the Strategic Forum. We want to map the adult learning, not just looking at the stuff that actually makes it into the plans, but the stuff that other people don't even see as legitimate, that's not in there because they're not seeing people as real partners. So we're doing a lot of work to do that. The main area that I wanted to just mention for a few minutes is the rollout of Adult Achievement Awards and Community Achievement Awards. We're going through a really interesting journey of saying that we want to see as much adult education accredited as we possibly can, and I know that can be quite controversial. I suppose there are a number of things that we look at within that and say, okay, I don't think I've ever met an adult learner who doesn't, who's actually going to say, no thanks, I don't want a qualification along the way. They might not set out to look for that qualification, but actually if they're going to get a qualification that counts towards them getting improved employability opportunities, counts for them getting into better further and higher education opportunities, it acknowledges the learning that they've done, people want that. And what we've done is we've developed these adult education awards, these adult achievement awards, and they are really about recognising the depth of learning And when they go up in levels, it's not about the knowledge that you've been, it's not about the information that you've been learning. They're not information based. It's about the depth of learning that takes you through that. And some of those qualifications at the moment, they're just being developed right through to A level. We've got them at higher level just now, which sits just below our A levels in the UK. So very high level qualifications that make a real difference, as well as making sure that we've got them at the right level so that people can come in and engage. They are making an enormous difference. And the learners that I showed you earlier on were talking about the amazing difference that it makes for them. What I'll do is, I'm aware of time, so I won't go over a lot of this, but inspection as an improvement tool is something that we are really passionate about. We want to make sure that inspection is used for improvement. As an inspector, the worst thing that happens to me is people saying their voice goes up an octave, everything's lovely, everything's fine, have a quick look at my practice and then run away and leave me alone. Don't bother me with what you're doing around here. My job is to go out and be an improvement advisor when I'm going out on inspection. The job is to walk beside people and say, I'm sure you're here trying to do the best job you possibly can. Let me walk with you, bring the knowledge and information that I have from other parts of the country and help you do it even better if I possibly can. That's what inspection's about in Scotland, and it is a game changer when we do it like that. Again, I've never walked away from an inspection without people hugging and saying, I didn't know it was going to be like this. Can you stay? And you think, well, no, we can't stay, but it's been lovely. But we will be sending colleagues back to help you with certain improvements. So we do a lot of close work. So the final few things I wanted to just highlight is just saying what doesn't work so well. What's still out there? We still have a lot of practitioners who are talking about the poor cousins in community learning and development, saying, you know, it's all right for you to say all these things, but we're still out there fighting for funding. We're still out there with nobody understanding us, all sorts of things. Now, I'm not saying that to underestimate how hard that feels. I sit in an organisation which is predominantly from very different levels and types of education, and I know that sometimes people are looking at me going, that's really sweet that you think that, Maureen. Anyway, we'll go over here as the educators and think about what we really need to think about. I haven't punched anybody yet when they're doing that, but you know, you really want to, don't you? So I get how angry that can make you, but it still means you've got to find different ways to deal with it. This idea that school and government don't and won't work with us and don't and won't understand us, I don't think that's acceptable for us. I think we've got an awful lot to do to find our way into those systems. Our learners aren't interested in qualifications. Well, I covered that one off. And this idea that's coming through in Scotland, one of the fascinating things is that people are actually starting to say, I'm quite resentful. We're really great at getting all these learners to work with us on all these tough things. We get to the most vulnerable learners, and these school people are coming in and trying to steal our space. They're trying to actually come in and actually do things the way we do them, and they can't. Well, why not? Why would you want to hold on to something that works? So there's a lot of things like that around. And there is still a lack of understanding and buy-in from some people. We do still feel really depressed sometimes when people are saying, actually, you know, you're all so cute and lovely, but you don't really understand the big issues, so way over in the corner. But also this idea that the stuff you do is good stuff, but actually we've got a real high priority on getting the real stuff done. It's so wrong, because, I mean, how many people do you know who are qualified to the hilt but have no social skills? Might be among them myself, I'm not sure. But, you know, there are a lot of people who need the skills and talents that we have. So we've got still lots more to do. I hope that's been a helpful romp through. And I'm really happy to discuss and engage with you as we go over the next couple of days.
So Maureen gave us an invitation to ask some questions if we wanted to. There's one down the back.
Tell me why community learning and development?
Okay. We've had a really well established, like a 30, 40 year history of doing what was called community education. When I did my diploma, and I graduated in 86. It was community education at that stage, and it brought them all together. And I think that our genuine feeling is that you can't undertake good adult education or good youth work without a community development process. You can't undertake good community development without actually undertaking good youth work and good adult learning in there too. They're intrinsically linked, and that's why. Was that what you were thinking? Hooray!
You had 2 slides and about the statement of ambition,
Yeah.
and one ended with an active and productive role both personally and socially, and another one ended with develop, grow and prosper both socially and economically. Now, I find, I'll speak for myself and I think it might be true for others, that there's a lot of focus on the purpose of everything being economic growth. And it's very difficult to enter the conversation that you've obviously part of in this country because it's actually predicated on a different set of assumptions. And I just wondered if you've got a response to the predicament as I think we find ourselves in. Because you've obviously cracked the nut, but that little word slipped in there, and there's the last statement of ambition, and I thought, I'm going to get your pen and strike that out. So I'm just wondering if you've got like it's actually a really serious issue.
Yeah, absolutely is.
Because we're actually faced with that belief that things develop because of economic growth. And it's basically predicated on the assumptions that people only act in the market. And with that approach, personal approach, individual approach.
Yeah. I think we would be remiss if we weren't to acknowledge that by undertaking all of the work that adult learning does, it actually has a big impact across all of these spheres. So it does actually have an impact on economic growth if it's done well. It can't be the only factor and the only rationale for doing it, however. Or the purpose. We're saying if you get adult learning right, you will have a happier, healthier, more prosperous society. You'll have all of that. So, and for us, I suppose what we've managed to do is to win the argument so that there is no but. So we're saying, part of thing what I'm seeing and getting a sense of here is I think it can be funding stream related a great deal of the time, and I think that can make things very difficult. What we don't have is funding streams within government that take you down those routes. So we have a Children and Young People and Adult Learning Fund that we run through Scottish Government, and it's not got the streams that are actually saying this is only about employability, this is only about economics, this is only about this. It's actually about saying we know that this work delivers on all of this. Fact. And I think because we've managed to by stealth win that through, then that's made the change.